The Business of Art, brought to you by the Video Department. So, theater is, obviously a big passion of mine, and it's the one thing that is on my mind constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, I do want to do something, and I am actively pursuing, if not at least one specific thing, trying to do something.
Okay.
I don't want to say too much more because, anytime you put something out there and then it doesn't happen, you're just going to feel silly.
Yeah, well, wow, we might be jumping in already really deep, but
Jump in.
I've committed this year, 2024, to audiobooks only in my commute. So being the good theater homosexual that I am, I started the top of the year with Barbra Streisand's book, which was so fat.
And what's it called? Just a little bit closer.
You know what? I don't remember.
That's okay.
I think it's just called My Name is Barbara.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's hard to know certain things when you're listening to it. Right. You don't get the visual every
I don't
day.
have a visual, exactly. But, about not saying too much or there was a quote that she had brought up a few times in the book that really sort of became my mantra for this year. And it's, at the moment of commitment, the universe conspires to assist you. So it's
yeah, I like that.
There has to be an element of talking about it. There has to be an element of bringing it up for the universe to know.
Yes. Just not necessarily on the podcast.
Not necessarily on the podcast.
Off mic for sure. I will very gladly tell you because the specific thing that is in mind, I am excited about, and the person who's directing I'm specifically excited about. So I have no problem telling you, but I just would hate to say it on the podcast and then not happen, or the show get you never know what's going to happen.
Heard.
Jinx. So we're here with Brian Baez, longtime friend, a professional of the arts in many capacities, currently working with... What is your official title?
My official title now is Manager of Theatrical Creative Development for Creative Studios by Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings.
Incredible. And how long have you been working there?
I started actually in 2017 with that company. I moved to Florida from Richmond in 2015. Was working another job on arts related. And then the opportunity to go back full-time into the arts and specifically the cruise industry that I had spent years in prior to that presented itself. And so I took that opportunity originally in a sort of hybrid casting and theatrical operations mix. So, which is really sort of hard to explain, especially if you're not in that industry specifically. We understand what casting is.
Of course.
But theatrical operations, at least in that business, is getting the talent from wherever they are all over the world to Tampa to rehearse, to their vessel to do their contract, and then back home. From that side of things.
Yeah. Similar to like a producer.
Yes, very much so. But in cruise world, it is visas and medicals and passports and logistics like that. Yes. So.
All right. Well, let's not jump into yet. I always like to go back to the very beginning. Where did you grow up?
Originally born in Queens, New York. Do I look at the camera? Hi.
You can.
Hi, camera. Originally Queens, New York. And I started life there, started school there. My family went New York to Fredericksburg, Virginia, when my dad went from Manhattan to D.C. And then I finished school and then came to VCU in 2003.
All right. So we're in Queens.
It's this area called Woodhaven.
Okay.
So it's pretty far east. And the way I describe it is like if you think Peter Parker's neighborhood in the first Spider-Man movie, like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, meets Ugly Betty.
Okay.
And that is what Woodhaven is like. Actually, one of the first lines in that Spider-Man movie when MJ is chasing the bus, he's chasing the bus. She says, "Stop the bus. He's been chasing us since Woodhaven Boulevard."
Oh, okay.
I'm from Woodhaven.
So, when I lived in Astoria, it was like a 20-minute ride from Midtown. How long from Midtown is it to get to Woodhaven?
I'd say it could be 45 to 50 minutes.
Okay.
Queens is on Long Island.
Yeah.
But this is almost Long Island.
Right. And it's not unreasonable to expect a 40 to 50-minute commute when you live in New York.
No,
It really isn't.
People from the Bronx sometimes,
Brooklyn. I mean, it's going to
Yeah.
take you at least that long to get to Manhattan from Brooklyn.
Exactly. So really not that far.
Yeah, exactly. But if you live in like Richmond, that sounds crazy.
Exactly. Yes.
But
it does.
your public transportation, you can get stuff done.
Oh yeah.
You can sleep.
Exactly.
You
You
know,
just walk to the
there's-
corner, catch the train, and you're
Yeah,
good.
exactly. So, how old were you when you went to Fredericksburg?
I was 9.
Okay.
So it was the mid 90s.
Did you see any of the Riverside Dinner Theater while you lived there?
Not while I lived there, but after I came to Richmond, in like 2010, I actually did a show there.
Okay.
And I drove back and forth every day, Fredericksburg to Richmond.
Yep, I've done it.
To do Chicago.
Oh,
Yeah.
were you Billy?
No, I was like sexy dancer number 7 or
Okay,
something.
yeah.
It was like tight Capezio pants and a bowler hat sort of situation.
So that was 2010.
It was 2010, so it was almost 15 years ago.
Anybody from Richmond, else in the Richmond the show? Who would
Yeah,
know?
if folks remember Matt James.
Yeah, of course.
He was
Also in the cruise industry, or he worked for Disney.
He worked for Disney for a
Yeah.
while, and now he's in New York full time working at the Vanderbilt building. Like, it's one of those like rooftop cityscape guest experience sort of things. He was our Mary Sunshine. And then if we have anybody in the audience who is even from generations prior to us, Wynn Creasy, who I know has worked in Richmond decades ago and at the Mill, she was our Mama Morton, and she was outstanding. She was outstanding.
Who did they get for the principals?
Vilma Gill was our Velma.
Really?
Yes.
Their name was Vilma?
Vilma was playing Velma.
I've never heard of such
Yeah.
a thing.
Yeah, and she was like a pop star in the 90s. Like she
Okay.
had like a record out and everything.
They are known for getting like pop stars or like
Yes.
TV stars.
Well, Vilma actually lived in Fredericksburg now, so
Yeah.
she was local. And then a really like spitfire of a musical theater singer, dancer, actor. Her name was Sabra. McCoulis, I think is her last
What
name.
a
now.
wonderful name.
Yeah. Just fiery red hair, just kick her face.
What about
And,
Billy?
I don't remember Billy.
Yeah.
I feel like his last name was Sharp.
Okay. Was he sharp?
Yeah, he was good.
Good. Did you know that I was cast as Billy Flynn in Chicago at Virginia Rep summer of 2020?
And then that shit went down. Yeah. Yeah, because I know there was a girl that had worked for me at Norwegian that had booked that.
Yeah, what was her name?
Her name was Erin
Okay.
something or other.
Yeah.
Now.
I knew quite a few people from
Yeah, she was in the ensemble.
different parts of the world who were going to be in that show, and I
Yeah.
was so excited.
Yeah.
A girl who I had worked with, she was in high school when I was working at Virginia Musical Theater.
Okay.
Was going to be in it. Was going to come from Virginia Musical Theater, but yeah, that one hurt a lot.
I mean,
lose
it's,
that one.
it's such a perfect show.
It is such a perfect show, and Nathaniel is great. He is a terrific producer, and so like I knew. I mean, they had Jessica Golden. What's her name? Jessica Lee Golden was.
Okay.
She was coming to play Roxy.
Amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And Nicole O. Oh,
We
was
call her Nicole O, right?
was Velma.
Oh, that makes total sense. Yes, of course. Not typecast.
Yeah, right. So when did you start doing? When did you discover the arts? When did you discover your love of theater?
I mean, definitely as like a young kid, my escape was like the old classic movie musicals first.
This is a young kid in Queens.
No, probably just like after we moved to Virginia. So
Yeah.
I'd say I was, 11, 12. I think it was those. So it was like Oliver and, Robert Preston and the Music Man and things like that.
Did you have any exposure to Broadway while you were in Queens?
They wanted to take my third grade class to see Miss Saigon, and I think the parents vetoed that.
What? I mean, that's
Well, I mean,
it's tough for
Yeah.
third graders.
For
yeah,
third
the more
graders.
now
Yeah.
they talk it out loud. That's There's, I'm sure there were other options.
I'm sure there were other options too.
Freaking Lion King.
Yeah, if anybody can tell me what was playing on Broadway in 1994, that would be really great.
It's just
There are a
people-
lot of people who-
Please chime in the comments
Yes.
with that attitude. I mean, it'd be easy to like Google, but it's better
Yeah.
if you just know it off the top of your head.
Yeah, but no, they really didn't do Broadway for us as young kids. Yeah. unfortunately.
And then what was your first experience on stage?
In Fredericksburg, sometime in the middle of my high school career, the theater teacher decided to open a community theater
Okay.
that was run out of the high school.
Good for them.
And so I think I was like ensemble number 7 in Oliver. I think that was like 2001.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2001, I think. And that sort of got that going, and then did that for a number of years before deciding to come to Richmond and study at VCU.
Yeah.
So, but originally I was a music student. I wasn't even a theater student.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, I studied voice in the music department
At VCU.
at VCU. And then the music and theater departments, at least at that time, I don't know if it's any different now, there was definitely like a wall between the two. It was a very classical music program and a straight acting program in the theater department. And
Yeah, there wasn't really musical theater back then.
No, I mean, there's just a handful of schools, really.
What year was this?
This would have been, well, I started there in 2003. So
Right.
in 2005, I kind of crossed over and auditioned for the musical at the theater department side.
What was the musical?
It was Frank Wildhorn's The Civil War.
Oh, right.
Right.
Brian,
Yes.
we have to talk about this.
Yes. So I ended up doing that, which was an educational experience for sure.
Yeah. I saw it.
Yeah.
I saw you.
Yeah. I had a big beard and wore lots of wool in that show.
But you were still just a music student.
I was still a music
not
student.
a theater major.
No. So then after that, David Leong, who was the head of the department at the time, said, "Why don't you come to the theater department?" I was like, "Well, I've got 2 years of music credits that I don't want to give up for a 4-year acting degree that I'd have to start from scratch from that I don't want." You know? So then he went cut, chop. And that is how the BA was created at VCU. So it took me an extra year while this new degree was being approved by the school and by the state. But then I was the first person to graduate with a BA in theater and a voice minor.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's good and smart on
Yeah.
their part to
Yeah.
fracture it like that and offer.
Yes. I still think, actually, in full disclosure, when my diploma came, I actually think it says BFA in theater performance.
Exactly.
But it's okay. I did my time.
God bless.
I did my time.
So yeah, so we started VCU at the same time.
Yeah.
And I ended up basically leaving the theater department because of that musical. Not directly, but indirectly because of that musical. And
So we could have gotten to know each other a long time ago.
I know, isn't that so funny? And I remember seeing you and I remember thinking you were great, and I was like, who the fuck is this guy? Because I was always jealous of people who were talented back then. But now I'm in a completely different place, where it's like, oh, now I want to get to know that person and work with that person versus they're gonna take all my parts.
I was still a music student, right? Like, I had to still do all the arias, and I had to do all the languages, and I had to go to all the recitals. Like, it was a very different path. But
So how much more music stuff were you doing after that, or did you?
I almost wrapped it up after that.
Yeah.
I almost wrapped it up after that. Just had a few things to sort of tie up to make sure I could qualify for that minor before fully transitioning out.
So walk us through what other. So you graduate around 2007.
Well, I ended up with the 5-year program.
2008. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. And then you're working around Richmond. What happens after that?
I was working in Richmond, but my path is really different than a lot of traditional Richmond theater paths, because I was that kid in the music department that was not classical. And then I was the kid in the theater department. Yeah, music, not classical. Theater, the singer.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't really fit anywhere really. And so I found my outlets to be in parks like Bush, Kings Dominion,
right.
things like that.
I was like, Maymont? Like, what are you talking about?
Yes. So like Bush and Kings Dominion and things like that. And that actually became, for me, my boot camp.
Yeah.
That was like the training that I really needed, actually, ultimately, for the performing that I ended up doing down the road.
And were you working with like Kathy Motley Fitch and stuff like that?
Kathy Motley Fitch is one of my favorite people in the entire world.
I need to get her on the pod.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She is the reason I got my first ship contract. because she was my music director at King's Dominion when I did School of Rock live in concert. She was the music director for that. And when I was singing, like, Hot for Teacher and Walk This Way and Pour Some Sugar on Me, trying to navigate how to do that 6 days a week, 6 shows a day, we realized we had the same voice teacher at VCU, Mr. Batty. And so she understood what my training was. And so she could speak my language. And so her and I really connected that particular summer. And she got me through that. And then a few years later, I ended up working for her again as my first music director at Royal Caribbean. So
She was your first music director at Royal Caribbean?
Yep. So I decided I wanted to pursue ships and went to Williamsburg, Virginia for the Stiletto Entertainment, which did Holland America shows at that time. It went really great. They had like 30 guys. I made it to the last 2. I called her up. I was like, oh my God, Kathy, it went so good. And she was just like, oh, well, thanks for calling me. I'm actually in Florida MDing for Royal. And I very casually said, well, if anything opens up, let me know. And then that was Friday. Monday, they had an opening. Tuesday, I spoke to casting. Wednesday, I had a contract. Sunday, I was in Florida.
Wow.
And then that was it.
What year was that?
2008.
Wow.
So I graduated in May and I left in August.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then that just started the whole trajectory of my life.
And so how long were you with RC?
I was at Royal 2008, 9, 10, 11. And then I went through a really crappy health period. And I was diagnosed with lymphoma when I was home from a contract. So that just completely derailed all life plans. And so I did 6 months inpatient chemo at MCV in 2012. And then after that, it was like, okay, like, how do I put my life back together? What do I do? Like, how do I still perform? And it was actually Phil Crosby and John Knapp at the time at RTP that sort of helped me get back into it by casting me in a show even before I had finished chemo. Like, I went to the audition looking like Uncle Fester. I had not a hair on my body, and they cast me in a show for that Christmas, and that was what really helped me get through it. Something to look forward to.
And then what's going on here?
No, good.
And then, so you did your first show back after cruises and after going through chemo and everything. Was at RTP?
It was at RTP.
And then, so talk to us, because this is, I think, a kind of a fun place to dig in for our audience in particular. What were some of the shows that you did in Richmond?
I did pre-chemo was My Fair Lady at Virginia Rep. I did.
Which production was this? This was with Stacey Sabai? No.
Yes, this was the dueling piano version.
Right. Yep.
So I did the Stacey Sabai My Fair Lady. I had also done Mame at what was then Barksdale, starring Kathy Halinda.
Phenomenal production.
Yes.
Michael Hawke.
Yeah. Robin Arthur.
I forgot.
Yes, it was Ali Weplow at the time.
Right.
So really, really fun cast. Yep, the Virginia Rep there. And then at RTP, it was like, I worked on Cabaret, I worked on Psycho Beach Party, Pageant, Lacage, things like that.
Cabaret was good. I think it was... Was there like a pre-show thing where somebody would...
There were like people in the house.
Yeah. So I came to a preview and there was like no one, I was like one of only 3 or 4 people there, and I think that was when I first got introduced to Dan Simo. Is that possible?
Most likely, yes, because he was in that, and I love Dan Simo.
He was like kind of all over me in the audience.
The most, yes.
Yeah. Actually, no, the first time I was introduced to Dan Simo was at VCU in the one with the pinball. Tommy.
Yes.
He was so...
I was gone by that point. I didn't see it.
He was so freaky good in that. He was freaky.
Stupid talented.
Yeah. All right. So keep going. What?
I did the Wild Party at Firehouse.
You did the Wild Party?
I did Wild Party.
That's been in my head a lot recently.
Yeah, with Jace
and Terrence and
Greg Garrett.
Greg Garrett, Devron, right?
Yep. And Josh Marin.
Josh Marin.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, who was Two of a Kind? Who was that duo? Do you remember? Too long
The
ago.
Darmano brothers?
No. The
I'm
big
really
guy, Two of a Kind is like the big guy and the little girl.
Oh, like the
song,
like
they do the number.
Oh, it was Nick Aleph. No, that's a lie. That's a lie.
That would have been perfect.
It would have been perfect. I see his face. I can't remember his name. I'm so horrible.
That's okay.
Yeah. But that guy.
Okay. Yeah, I love that part. I love that. Yeah, that's on my bucket list. So there's like a few shows that I would step out to do right now.
Okay.
That's one of them.
Okay.
Jekyll and Hyde is another one.
Amazing.
Company. There's maybe like two others. But literally, like, there's not much that's going to get me off my butt right now. And it's the types of shows that people don't really do anymore.
Yeah.
Which is... We'll get there.
Well, I think you and I were in the same age bracket. And I think... I'm assuming we're in the same age bracket.
Yeah, which is it's the sexy age bracket.
Exactly, but also like mostly uncastable age bracket.
This is weird. I've had all these conversations within the past week. Yeah,
but I look forward to being 10 years older.
Yeah, dad roles.
Right.
Yeah,
you know.
I want to play the dad in Next to Normal. I could in a certain production right now, but like in 10, 15 years,
absolutely.
Like it's gonna
or
be
like
right in the
Fun
pocket.
Home would be so great.
Fun Home's great.
Yeah.
There's so many things like that. Playing King Arthur versus Lancelot. You know,
Exactly.
that's the metaphor, if you
to.
will. Like, and that's where I've told Allison, like, hopefully at that point, hell, I'll be 60 by the time we have kids who are grown. But I mean, 60 is the new whatever.
Sure.
And so I could totally see myself giving it another go. Like, at that point, our businesses will probably be hopefully less.
Well, we would have sold them. We would have made millions.
Yeah, exactly.
And, yeah.
All right, so take us through, if there's any other hits, get us there, but then get us
really
to...
it. I did a lot of solo work, too.
Right, like, you did a lot of cabarets.
Yes, RTP, has become sort of the cabaret home in Richmond. And so...
Yeah, I think they program 4 a year, don't they?
They do. It's a part of their season now. Yeah. And I think they actually have a separate cabaret subscription as well. Subscribe to local theater.
Yeah, honestly, that is a great message.
Yes. But Phil was really great about giving me that platform. And that's actually where I, as a performer, am the happiest. Like piano, bass, drums, and a mic stand.
Yeah. No, I get that. That's a specific skill set for sure. That's like, there's only a few people I think who that's where they're like really comfortable.
Sure.
You, Scott Witchman,
and Georgia Rogers Farmer.
Georgia Rogers Farmer. Sure. We actually just went and saw Scott in a Sherlock Carol.
Oh, okay. Where was that?
At Virginia Stage Company in Norfolk, which is, I don't know if you've been there. It's phenomenal. It's like the November, but a little bit better preserved on the inside. Okay. It's old. And it's an interesting premise. So it's Sherlock. He plays Sherlock Holmes, and he is investigating. It's like 15 years after the events of A Christmas Carol.
Okay.
And so he's investigating the death of Scrooge.
Oh. Ooh.
And so all these characters from A Christmas Carol are in it.
Right.
And so they're doing it in rep with A Christmas Carol. And so I'm pretty sure every actor who was in a Sherlock Carol is in A Christmas Carol except for Scott.
Well, right, yes.
I'm pretty sure that's true, except maybe because one character plays the older Tiny Tim.
Okay.
But he maybe is an ensemble or something like that in A Christmas Carol. But it's such a great concept. I love that concept for bringing people in.
That's so smart.
Yeah, and it's the same author. It's like they're one of those theaters that does A Christmas Carol every year, as you should. Mm-hmm. Find whatever your A Christmas Carol is. And so it's the same playwright who wrote their version of A Christmas Carol. He wrote this new thing. So it's like Virginia Stage Company is doing it right. If you don't know them, follow them. Yeah. They do good stuff. They did a production of Fiddler. So I just found this out and started to dominate, but we got time. We don't have anywhere to be, right?
We can edit.
That's right. I don't, but I can. We saw Eva, Scott's wife, and Scott in Fiddler, but Eva was the mother. Mm-hmm. And she told me that the guy who directed it, and I hope I'm getting this right, he was maybe somehow involved with the original production in some way. I don't know if he was the original choreographer. I don't think that's right, but maybe he was like an associate choreographer or something. Okay. And now basically full-time, he directs Fiddler with the original choreography.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
That's like he goes around the country installing it, basically.
Yeah, basically. I mean, yeah. I mean, I know other associates who do that for other shows.
Exactly.
Like,
for
if
other
you're going to
shows,
be doing
exactly.
Kinky Boots, it's going to be
You're going to be
and
doing
Rusty.
Chorus Line or
Exactly.
whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that's awesome. I think that's brilliant. I think it's so smart for theaters to do it that way. Unless you're doing like a super original take on Fiddler, which by all means do. Like if you can afford to do this, because like that to me, and it was fun. It was phenomenal. It helped that the Tevye was like, oh, he was so good. But having the original choreography, like it was really magical. There's something about it, and it just really works.
I wish I had seen the Yiddish version in New York.
Do you speak Yiddish?
No, but I think there were like sub or super titles.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, I would have after that production.
That's an incredible piece.
Yeah.
I think Tradition is the best opening number in musical theater.
Somebody had just put up, not just, 2 years ago maybe, someone had put like a poll out on Facebook here in Richmond, like what musical has the best opening number that sets the stage for exposition, introduces the characters, and like everybody was chiming in. I think Tradition took one of the top spots. Sweeney took another top spot, and actually the opening of Six took another top spot. So
I'm not as familiar with Six.
we produced that for a while, so it's playing in my nightmares now.
That's the 6 women, right?
Yeah, it's the 6 wives of Henry VIII.
I'm thinking of also there's 9.
Right, yes. Also about lots of women.
Right.
Yes. About one man's wives.
Yeah. So get us to your now career.
Okay.
How did you get there?
Yeah, okay. So fast forward through, we're going to sort of through 2012 to 2017.
Just so people know, that was not a digital sound effect. That was Brian made that with his mouth.
I moonlight as a Foley artist.
Sorry to interrupt. I just couldn't let that go.
So fast forward then, like those 5 years, landed up in Florida, 2017, back working in the arts full time in this administrative capacity.
At Norwegian?
At Norwegian, which is the production studio is based just outside of Tampa, Florida. So just a little bit from me in St. Pete.
Both cool towns. Tampa's great.
Yes.
Tampa's up and coming, right?
Yes, but St. Pete is like the cooler younger brother of Tampa that everybody actually wants to hang out with.
For sure.
Right? Yeah. So I really do. I do love St. Pete. So yeah, found myself in Florida, and then there was this job opening at Norwegian that a friend of mine had told me about, who was an older roommate of mine. And so I actually had applied for and interviewed the position, but when they offered it to me, just financially, I couldn't make it work. So I said, thank you so much for considering me.
And this is the theatrical operations?
This is, that original position that I was in. Apparently, like 4 or 5 months later, they still hadn't filled it. And so they came back and said, can you come in again and talk? And I was like, absolutely happy to. Just know that my circumstances are still the same. And so if we're going to talk about this again, then this has to be a part of the conversation. And fortunately, they did. And so they brought it to where I needed to be. And so then I left my job working at a private speech therapy intensive in Florida to go back to my roots in theater and back to the cruise industry. And I've been there since. So since being there and starting 2017, I started as the casting administrator. And then I became a casting specialist, this corporate terminology now, specialist, and then became the manager of the casting department. And now I'm the manager of theatrical creative development. So I'm no longer in casting, but my job is now to work alongside the artistic director and to develop, research, create all the shows and experiences for all the new ships coming out over the next several years, as well as designing the venues and working with the other departments as well, whether it be F&B, youth programs, things like that, to make sure that the entertainment lineup on the vessels is really cohesive all the way through. So it doesn't seem like hodgepodge. Oh, there's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but really a guest can have a cohesive experience their entire time, whether it's the parties, the shows, this, that, whatever it may be.
It's incredible. That sounds like a really fun job.
It is. It is a really fun job. It's making me stretch and use another part of my brain, which I was kind of hungry to do. So, really excited to do that. And, yeah.
So how are you splitting your time right now?
I don't know.
You're traveling to cast, or are you not doing that as much anymore?
I actually have just sort of finally wrapped all that travel up. When I moved into this position, I still had several months of auditions on my calendar that I had to see through. So I only just finished, this is the end of December now. Beginning of the month, I did a weekend in Mexico City, and then I was in San Juan, and that was the end of my audition travel, really, for now my tenure at Norwegian.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, I've been really fortunate to get to travel. I've done auditions now on 6 of the 7 continents, right? I don't need any penguins for anything, so we're not going to Antarctica. But I'm able to work with production companies and directors and producers in South Africa and Australia and Mexico and all over Europe and whatnot. And that's been really exciting and fulfilling and educational. So really grateful for that experience, for sure. Not something a lot of people get to say they get to do.
Well, you may have opened yourself up to some litigation with the penguin lobby after that comment, but
Yes.
watch out, penguins.
Yeah, well, we can't ask anybody if they're a penguin. So if a penguin were to submit based on their resume,
that's right. Is it a penguin? Is it a pangolin? What is
yeah,
it?
Yeah, exactly.
So. Is there something else that is going on that you wanted to talk about?
Well, yeah. We are gonna pause on the release of this, I think, till an appropriate time.
Yeah.
No, so the next big thing is my boyfriend and I are moving overseas.
Okay.
We are moving to the Netherlands in 2.5 months. So,
is that part of Norwegian?
Not directly, no. So there is a visa program between the U.S. and the Netherlands called DAFT, Dutch American Friendship Treaty. And if you are Dutch or American, you can have residency in the other country if you open a business. And so I'm opening my own theatrical office with a focus primarily in theatrical casting out of Utrecht, which is just 25 minutes outside of Amsterdam.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've already got some work lined up. And so it's really just when I show up, get working right away.
Wow. So this is happening soon?
In 2.5 months.
Wow.
I'm leaving in March.
You've already got all of your paperwork in order?
I'm working with, we are working with a expat relocation service.
Yeah.
And so all of that, applications, court dates, all that stuff is being facilitated by this specialist. So
does that mean that you're leaving Norwegian?
So as a corporate employee, yes, I will have to. And hopefully by the time this comes out, I've already had that conversation.
I'll check in with you for sure.
That conversation with them. But
or we'll just cut around this.
Sure. But actually, after I knew that I was leaving the casting department and that boss, I did talk to him and I said, this is what I'm planning to do. And I would like to continue working with you all in that capacity.
Like an independent contractor.
As an independent contractor. So when I go and I'm auditioning, when I was auditioning Kinky Boots or Six or Beetlejuice in any market really outside of the US, we would contract and work directly with a local casting director who knows the talent, knows the agents and all that, to then facilitate and produce that set of auditions for us. And then I would fly over and do the auditions with that casting director as well, and that creative team to then bring them back to the US. So my thought and my presentation to my boss was, I can do all of that for you over the entire continent of Europe for a fraction of the cost that you pay a third-party casting director and still send me.
Yeah.
So just the institutional knowledge that I would bring to that. So,
right.
And he thought that very interesting and very worthwhile.
Yeah.
So
Would you have to learn to speak Dutch?
if I want to have residency, yes. So the Netherlands has the highest English language proficiency of any non-native speaking country.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So,
And I've been there, so
yeah.
I recognize it for sure.
So I don't need to speak Dutch. If I'm there 5 years and I want to apply for residence or citizenship, then yes. And I would have to speak it at a B2 or C1 level, which is pretty high. Pretty high for sure. So I've got 5 years.
So is your boyfriend Dutch?
No, he's not. So he's been doing the Duolingo.
How did y'all? I thought you said you had to have one of you had to be, or no?
No. No. If you were Dutch or American, you can move to the other country. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
if you open a business.
If you open a business. So I will be the one opening the business. And then as a co-applicant, he can have employment. Yeah, he can come with and find employment there on his own.
Right. Oh, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
You spend time in Amsterdam?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have been back and forth 1 or 2 times a year for the last several years for extended periods of time. And
Knowing that you're planning on moving there?
Yes.
Okay.
Like initially no, and then yes.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I've been able to sort of lay that groundwork as well for my potential and now upcoming pending move.
Yeah.
And actually it's really because of my work through Norwegian and the travel and the connections that I've made internationally that is really allowing me to set this up and get to work right away. There is a casting director that we worked with overseas who is now the head of casting for, I'm trying to be vague and diplomatic all at the same time, who is now the head of casting worldwide for a major musical playing everywhere. Does that make sense? But she is located on the other side of the world. And so I just had a quick drink with her almost 2 years ago when I was in Sydney, contemplating this transition into going out on my own. And she told me that this musical that she works on was starting a Dutch production in 2024. And then my mental engine light went off and I said, bing, right? And I said, well, Lisa, I didn't tell you this, but I'm planning to move. And her jaw hit the table. I was like, yeah, we've been back and forth. We've decided on Utrecht. And she goes, that is where this is going to be happening. She's like, Brian, I can't physically be there. There are no casting directors. Like, they have a huge and very rich theatrical industry and history, but the infrastructure is different than what we know New York or London or Australia. She's like, the German production is like, the auditions are being run by the company manager because they don't have anybody to do it. She said, you move to Europe and you become me for all things this show. And being that you're American and the original producers being American, she's like, that will just make it so much easier.
Right.
Understanding how they want things to go, their process, what they expect, So after having that conversation, that was really the big bolus of, okay, yeah, no, I need to do this. I'm at a point where visa program, work opportunity, and finances have all allowed me to go, okay, now is the time to do this.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's really because of the fact that I've been able to travel so much with my work, so much for my work with Norwegian, and then maintain those relationships, because I hadn't worked with her really since just before COVID, but it's, the relationships that you develop and maintain and will really, can and do come through for you.
Yeah.
When you least expect it.
No, yeah, it's all about relationships for sure, which is hard to grasp when you're younger, I think. It's much easier to think that it's all about you.
Absolutely. Yes. No, absolutely. Yeah.
But it's really not. It's all about your relationships.
Yeah.
Well, that's really exciting. And I love your entrepreneurial spirit in all of this. I think that's really important. And that's that's a kind of a good transition, I think, to what will end up being our final topic. And I'm sure it'll be a deep dive, which is the future of the theater industry. And I think that what what cruise lines are doing, what like Vegas is doing, I think are steps in the right direction.
Sure.
And I worry about kind of what's happening. Well, New York's its own beast. It's almost even hard to count New York as the theater industry. Broadway's its own thing.
Yes.
If we're talking about the theater industry, we're talking in New York. We're talking about off Broadway.
Sure.
But so we have not talked about this. You did not know I was going to ask you this.
Okay.
Do you have any thoughts off the top of your head about the current like state of the union, as it were,
Of the theater industry as a whole? I mean, it's rough. Now, are you wanting to talk about from like an audience and business perspective, or like those entering the business, those entering?
No parameters.
No
Let's talk about all of
parameters?
it. I'm more interested in the business side of things.
The business side of things. Like how candid are we getting?
As candid as we can without throwing people under the bus.
Okay, I won't throw anybody under the bus.
It's hard for me sometimes.
Yeah, no. Well, I think we all know COVID did us no good.
COVID was bad.
COVID did us no good. And we had to adapt. We had to figure something out. And we all sort of, even if we didn't outwardly admit it, we all sort of assumed that things would just automatically revert back, which they did not. And I don't think really ever will. So in the same way that we had to be really, what's the word I'm looking for? When you like, we had to be really innovative. I think that now that will be the new normal. Our new normal is constantly having to innovate.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? To stay relevant, to reach people. As far as the talent, now, because I spent so many years in casting, right? I think there's, people are going to shoot me for saying this. There's too many schools. There's too many theater programs. How do you have too many theater programs? There are too many theater programs taking people's money.
Yeah.
That's how I'll phrase it.
Yeah.
Who then pump out graduates who are ill prepared for the reality of the business. And that is scary to me. Does that make sense?
And a bit malicious.
Yes.
And a bit dishonest.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. The schools, yes. I see what you're saying.
The schools.
Yes. I thought you meant the people.
No. I have nothing but sympathy and empathy for people who spend or go, let's just say go $50,000, $100,000 in debt at minimum.
Right.
For a liberal arts degree in the theater. I think that it's really, I not in a condescending way. I feel bad for the predicament that they are in.
For sure.
Because even at the highest levels, the money is just not there.
Right.
Unless you are an artistic director or a managing director and you're pulling in a 6-figure salary.
Right.
It's not like that really.
Sure.
For the rest of the admin staffs or the people who are building the sets or whatever.
Totally.
And it's really hard for the actors.
Yep.
Because actors, especially in the theater, you don't have the capability of really creating your own opportunities in the same way that you do if you are an actor in film or if you're a musician or if you're a painter.
Right. You're at the mercy of those who are going to hire you.
You're at the mercy of so many levels. You're at the mercy of venue, producer, script. There's so many things that have to fall into place, and you have to be one thing that fits into this much bigger operation. Whereas if you are somebody who is trying to cut their teeth on film acting, you got an iPhone.
Yeah.
That's it. You got an iPhone. You can make your own movies.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's a big hurdle. That said, I think that there is going to be a retail boom in the new year, especially for local.
Sure.
And I think we can include live performing arts in that.
Yeah.
And so I do think that there's hope.
Yeah.
And I think that this, to quote Jekyll and Hyde, this is the moment.
This is the moment. Yeah.
That, but like you said, it takes innovation. And the reason that I brought up Las Vegas is primarily because of Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah. They've had their own journey.
And they are, not only do they sort of innovate beyond like what traditional theater is, but they sort of are innovating, like you said, on their journey every step of the way. Like each show is innovating new technology, innovating new magic tricks, whatever it is. And it is the closest thing to film as a medium. One of the reasons I got into film is because it combines all of the other art forms, or it has a capability to combine literally all of the other art forms in a way that no other medium really does. And in a way, like Cirque du Soleil has kind of like said, okay, hold my beer. We're going to join that battle because there's so much media going on with their shows. Yeah. And I'm not saying that everything in the future in theater needs to be multimedia, whatever. But like, what is it? What does it look like that's going to be new? Or what people looking for is not necessarily the new. Maybe it's nostalgia.
Especially... Well, okay. I will answer that question. I want to talk first about Cirque du Soleil because, yes, they innovate and, you can go to a Cirque du Soleil show and see something you've never seen before. I think another thing that Cirque du Soleil really understands is their audience base, and they understand what their people want to see in the time frame that you have them. And so they're really smart about having their finger on the pulse of the market. Does that make sense? And they are creating theater and they are creating art, not necessarily for themselves. It's really easy to create art in a very self-indulgent way. And companies like Disney, companies like Cirque du Soleil understand who they're marketing and making for. And that is why they're super successful.
This man's preaching right now, folks. So that's what I interviewed a great artist, John Price. He's a fine artist. And he said the exact same thing. He's like, at a certain point, you have to realize that in order to make art for yourself, you have to first make art for the other people because they will pay the art that you make for yourself.
Absolutely.
And it seems like the industry of theater as a whole. Yeah. And I like the 80-20 rule. Like 80%. When I'm talking about I'm saying the whole industry. I'm really talking about 80%.
Sure.
80% I feel like has just completely lost sight of that, and they are making theater for themselves. They're making theater for the people who are already built in as their audience. They're gonna be there no matter what. Not coincidentally, those people tend to not have. You know what I mean? There's going to be some huge wealthy donor type people, but most of the people who are involved in theater are broke because they're working in theater that doesn't pay them.
Exactly.
Or they're volunteering. You know what I mean? And so, and yes, you want to create a welcoming environment for those people who are loyal. Those are your people. But it is still a business.
It is still a business.
And nobody opens a sandwich shop that just contains,
your favorite sandwich,
jelly bean sandwiches or whatever your little kid likes. Like that, you can't do that. You got to do what is going to serve the most people.
Exactly.
And ultimately, I think that is the more altruistic thing.
Yes.
I don't think that it's altruistic to sort of preach to the choir.
Yeah.
It's better to bring people in, maybe people who don't agree with you, maybe people who have different viewpoints, or people who don't look like the people who are normally going to be in theater. And it's like, let's try and get all these people in a room together somehow and have a common experience. But it's hard because a lot of the material isn't as conducive to that as it used to be, I think.
Sure. I would agree with that. I would absolutely agree with that. And you brought up earlier, like, where are we sort of in the innovative versus nostalgia sort of thing? So I want to tie that question into the building for other people, because it has to be, it is a delicate balance of both, because it's not just people our age going to the theater. And we need to push the envelope. We need to be innovative. We need to create state of the art and cutting edge everything, but you will also lose people who really just want what they know as well. So that is a lot of, well, not a lot of, that is a major part of my job right now, is deciding where that line is in the content that we now create.
And where do the classics fit in the future, like the Rodgers and Hammersteins and...
Sure. Well, I mean, sometimes that's difficult when things don't age as well content-wise, right?
There's plenty of examples of that, yeah.
Right?
But also plenty of them do age, specifically Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Right.
A lot of them are not bad.
No. And I think there is a way, like, shows are successful, as you said, when they reach the broadest audience. And so for these big classics, these big shows that we've known that have been around for 60, 70, 80 years, have sustained for a very specific reason. And so I think there is a way to then take that material and bring it into the 21st century and maintain the themes and maintain the characters and the message and update it and wrap it in a modern package. Yeah. And so I love when shows get facelifts, and reimaginings.
Let me tell you off camera about an idea I have for a facelift for one of those shows. I'll pitch it to you. Maybe we can do it at Norwegian.
Love
You're
that.
You're not going to be there anymore.
Well, we can do it in the Netherlands. We can do it in Germany.
Netherlands has, I mean, Europe and performing arts theater, it's just like, it's no comparison.
Because they've got government cabinet positions for the arts. And the arts are funded. And so they have the freedom and the ability to create and create and create and create.
I agree with you. I think that there's a step before that, though, which is the people want it, and when it is funded, they go. And so it's like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg in this fight? And
well, I think, when there is a high level office, when there is a cabinet position for something, it's sort of, for anything, it dictates the priorities of that society.
Yeah.
Environment, education, like, these are things that are all important to us. So if arts and culture is important to us, it should have an elevated or a seat at the table. Yeah. So I think when they have these things, it just permeates down to the culture that, yes, these things are important to maintain.
But I mean, what's to stop Virginia for having a state person, like, what a terrific... I think that is what you're saying is terrific. Like, it's making my brain fire of like what somebody in a position like that could do if they had the backing of the governor or the backing of the president, if it was a federal position. Right. Like, the amount of good that they could affect. The challenges with all of these is cronyism and avoiding that sort of situation. So figuring out how do you make sure that it doesn't end up being just, friends paying friends, which is... challenge in the theater. There is a lot of, it's not nepotism, but there is a lot of like, oh, this person gets this role because they're my friend, not necessarily because they're the best person for the job. And I understand that. I think a lot of times that makes sense. However, it can also be the detriment of an entire production of your season. For example, hiring the wrong person as a director could literally screw almost an entire season if you put up, and I feel comfortable saying this because that production was good, but if Virginia Rep had put up a production of Mary Poppins, which sold like hotcakes, by the way, that wasn't very good. Right. Like, think about like how that can have down ripple effects. So there is a quality issue, I think, at play.
Yeah, and again, I'm not going to trash anything, but I have seen that firsthand as well. Yeah. With, in certain international markets that have government positions and lots of money thrown into the shows, but the quality not necessarily being there. Yeah. I've seen that firsthand.
What do you think? So you were casting, like, how many years in a row were you freaking sitting at casting tables, like, on the reg?
Top of 2018 till the end of 2004.
Were there any observations for like how things changed from 2018 to 2024 in terms of like what was standing in front of you?
Yeah, the post-COVID graduate talent pool missed 2 years of in the room, in person audition technique. And your self-tape technique is very different than in-person audition technique.
Yeah.
And
that's all they had was self-tape for 2 years, basically.
that's all they knew how to do was self-tape. So getting people to actually accept their appointments and show up and do the audition, like, it's like the house hunter's dream checklist. You're the right type, and you've accepted, and you showed up. Like, oh my God, wow.
I never thought that showing up would be an obstacle.
Right.
In New York, when I was pounding the pavement there, you too many people. That was the problem.
New York's one of the worst markets. Like, I have more cancellations in Europe for Six, the musical, than I do almost anywhere else. Yeah.
Is it America?
It is, and I don't want to make generalities or blanket statements.
Is it worse in America though than it is in Europe?
Yes, absolutely. I think groups of people can struggle with like entitlement and expecting things to be handed to them and whatnot, and they don't know the struggle. I mean, it was very different for us. It was very different for the generations before us, and I think now, because everything is so instant, the follow through, I think, for a lot of talent just isn't instilled in them.
And I think that another downstream side effect of it being generally a non-well-paying industry, there is no direct correlation between, if I put in more effort here, I'm going to earn more dollars.
Right.
It's just not possible.
Sure.
Except at the highest level of the administrators and how much effort they're putting into marketing and stuff like that. But as an actor, as a technician or whatever, it's really not.
For sure.
And so, I think people like incentive structures. They like going, oh, okay. Like, you're getting researcher in business. There will be no ceiling to your income level.
I plan, we talked about committing to something and let the universe conspire to assist you. I will be the Bernard Telzy of Europe.
Yes, right. Exactly.
That's my goal.
Yeah. Speak it.
Yes.
That's great.
That's what we're going for. And there are lots of ways, I think, to get there too. Like, yes, I have this focus in theatrical casting, but my brain is putting all these different sort of business ideas together and how to create this mini empire and how to feed it and how to let it grow. So, which we can talk about as well.
Yeah.
Afterwards, but I feel like I've just got so many ideas and so many things that I want to try and test and experiment with and accomplish, and I feel like this next chapter I'm entering sort of field of dreams. Like, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah, and
that's really exciting to me.
That is really exciting.
Yeah.
Well, we're sort of reaching the end of our time.
Yeah.
The one question that I ask everyone is going to be complicated, so you'll have to kind of pick a perspective.
Okay.
But if somebody was looking to get into the theater industry, somebody is either coming out of high school and they want to just go into professionally, they're coming out of college, what advice would you give them to turn their passion into a profession?
Be as well versed as you can in as many facets as you can. Because to put all of your eggs in just one aspect can be detrimental. For a performer, gone are the days of just a singer or just a dancer or just an actor. You've got to do 3 of 3, or at least 2 of them really well and one passable. But like, being able to perform and direct or choreograph or design, if you're a designer, learning multiple disciplines, also having business sense, like this is the business of art, right? And I think the reason that for whatever reason the universe put this experience in front of me, it's because I had a degree, a ship performance experience, and years of corporate experience to then enter this world of corporate entertainment. So like studying business, studying marketing, studying arts administration, whatever it is, to make yourself that Leatherman, that all the tools sort of in one, I think will not guarantee success, but enable you to be lucky. And when I say lucky, lucky is when opportunity meets preparation. And if you are prepared for anything, you can take any opportunity.
That's a solid place to leave it.
That's that.
Some great themes. You
Yeah.
put it in a much more succinct way. Yeah. Well, Brian, we are looking forward to seeing where your journey takes us.
Thank you.
I
hope I do y'all proud.
You already are.
I hope I do y'all proud. It's just so funny because like I was just that random person that's like, oh, like he's sort of on the, yes, I did shows, but I felt very much on the outside of things because my work led me in different directions.
Right.
But, Richmond's still theater home for me.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud to say that.
Well, I know that I'm going to be coming to the Amsterdam area in the near future.
You definitely need to. Yeah, so we're just going to be like 25 minutes. Like, get off at Schiphol, take the little escalator down, get on the train to Utrecht, and you're there in 25 minutes.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Well, Alice and I will come visit for sure.
I love that. Always welcome.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.